right, well, let's go ahead and get to it here. So as we talked about last time, after getting the feedback from you all, there was definitely an interest in talking about requirements gathering. And because this is such a ginormous topic, we decided to divide it into two parts. So for today, what we're going to talk about mostly is tools and processes and things that you should be thinking about as you're preparing to do requirements gathering, to make sure that when you do actually have those workshops, that they run successfully. And then next month, we'll talk about, more about how to run the workshops and how to capture the requirements. So let me get this going here. So, we'll just welcome you all. We'll talk about the requirements overview a little bit. We'll do a little brainstorming, and we'll have around the content that we're providing to you. We'll have a little bit of time for open forum at the end if there's any other questions, and we'll also talk about more about the topic for next month if you want to provide any inputs on that, and then we'll wrap it up. But like I said, again, we're hoping we can make this a really interactive session. And since there's only 21 of you on the call, I don't think we'll go into breakout sessions so that we can have all that wisdom and goodness shared amongst the whole group here today. So when you think about requirements gathering, like I said, you have to think about setting it up, because you can't just run off and start a meeting and think you're going to be successful. And there is also actually doing the requirements gathering, as I said. So that's why we've split this into two different parts. And today we're just going to talk about mostly how to be successful with getting your preparation in order. So we're going to start out with some steps and tools here. And this is where we're looking for interaction and comments from everybody. Is this kind of a list that we've pulled together of steps and some resources that are available? And what I'd really love to come out of this is to put together like more of a comprehensive guide that we could make available on our community site in our platform owners area, and that you could use this as a resource. So obviously, first we start with a vision. It's kind of hard to figure out where you're going with requirements gathering if you don't have a vision for where you want to go. So I'd be interested to hear what any of you have experienced around this. I know I've definitely walked into customers who were just wanting to get down to grabbing requirements, and it's like, whoa, time out. What are we actually trying to accomplish here? What is the goal of going to ServiceNow? So anybody want to chime in on that? Any thoughts? Any resources that you all have used from ServiceNow that are around vision? Okay, Scott says automation, yep. And we'll be adding these into the list of things as I pull this all together later. Right, well, and one of the things that we felt was important was to make sure you were fully aware of what your as-is state is. So we have a resource here for that. Yes, Jerry, totally experience. And also, if you want to speak, just put your hand up and I can take you off mute. Unfortunately, the webinar functionality doesn't give me the ability to automatically take everybody off mute. So I'm not trying to keep everybody muted. So I'm going to take Jerry off if you want to expand on that a little bit more.
Hi, Britta. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Yeah, in terms of my experience, I suppose I've been in many kind of workshop sessions where I suppose we're looking at a business problem and understanding, again, very much of what's the high level kind of requirements that we want. But I always get the case of, right, this is what we want, this is what we're going to build, and off we go without actually understanding. I think, as Britta's saying, it's about the vision of where we want to try and get to, but also understanding, what the outcomes we're trying to achieve from what we're trying to solve, how we're going to solve the business problem. But also understanding in terms of, got to think about who the audience are, who's going to be involved, because obviously if there's changes, there's going to be organizational change management that we need to be aware of, and understanding how people are going to adopt the solutions that you're going to develop.
And David also had his hand up, so had something to add.
Hi, can you hear me? Perfect. Right. Yeah. So, Jerry, I completely agree with that and understand that. It's really similar to where I work in that we don't really have anybody that's trained as a business analyst or requirements gatherer within our team. So we kind of approach it just on like a best endeavors basis, but without any real guidance of what we're doing. And what we tend to find, and I actually had a call with somebody this morning about this exact thing, is that customers tend to tell you what they think the solution needs to look like. What they're not particularly good at is explaining what they want to actually achieve from it. So just a really quick example, we wanted a way to automatically add an email address for some for a particular type of incident. So when a particular category gets selected, a particular email address has to be added to the ticket. But what they didn't ex what the person who was doing the solution design didn't do was ask what problem they were trying to solve. It was more that they then just went and built something that automatically added an email address into the tickets. But because they didn't know what problem they were trying to solve, they actually caused some knock-on impacts to other things. And the solution that they designed didn't actually do the job of what they wanted anyway. So we've got a big gap in the skills of our staff. I know that's the point of these type of calls in that there's more to service now than the technical side of things. There's more behavioral and uh, type of skills that we need to promote within our teams. And yeah, this is probably one of the biggest challenges, and it's one of the difficulties that I've had in trying to be a platform owner and moving away from doing like the technical support and administration myself. When I give that to other people, because they don't have the softer skills to be able to do that job effectively, it means that I haven't actually been able to completely delegate the responsibilities for things like requirements gathering and solution building to those people without having to also then just keep getting involved myself. So I think this is a really, really important topic, and yeah, can completely agree with what Jerry was saying.
David, I was just going to say thank you for just adding your part on, and I think you mentioned a very key term or something that for me it's quite important is that service design aspect is really understanding through the different stages of if you're developing a let's say a solution or you're doing some configuration, it's really understanding what dependencies are really impacting on user experience, customer experience, but also how can we ensure that we're making a process more efficient rather than making a process more, again, I've been in places where people just like to add more complexity to a process. But for me, it's like, how can we keep it simple? If we can keep it simple and ensure that, people are just not going to be coming in and thinking, oh, I've got to go through this process again. It's taking a long time. But how can we just make it simplified for them to say, right, I can get on with what I'm doing and we can just improve it as continuous service improving going forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rita, I think you're still muted.
Sorry. Did Binod want to come off mute and say something? You had your hand up. All right. I think Casey, and Casey's one of our regular attenders, and he always has really great input. He's saying, he put the vision into tangible goals, pillars, data-driven decisions, agent performance, et cetera, to help abstract the product talk into business goals. Do you have any tools that you use for that or templates that you use, Casey, that you could share with the group? And while he's thinking about that. Oh, okay. Let me get you back unmuted, Casey. Let's see, unmute. There you go.
Yeah, I don't really have tools. It's more of a trying to put things into buckets, and a lot of times they can encompass all of them. But the tool I kind of lean into is just VTB and labels on them. So I try to categorize them and figure out which one's the most impactful. So, if I'm looking at adding a field to a form, and it might be to get better reporting. I'll plug that into data-driven decisions and then start trying to get to the outcome of like, is this really going to get you better reporting? Could you get this reporting if you actually associated a CI with that incident or whatever? And then ultimately the outcome is 9 times out of 10 in that use case, like I need this in a report for some specific reason, and we wind up building a bunch of additional steps for agents to click on or load to get this data that 1 or 2 times, you know.
Yeah, which goes to one of the points I have later in the deck, which, you know, when you're doing requirements gathering, you really have to think about reporting right away. I've been with a lot of customers who are like, oh, well, we'll worry about reporting later. But to your point, if you don't have the right data or fields on the form, you're going to be going back, tracking and, you know, complicating things and doing rework and all that good stuff later. And then Ben made a good point here about, you know, not too many customers he's come across have thought about the outcomes. Okay, Ben said he's used the Global Solutions Framework slide deck as an inspiration a few times. Yeah, I don't know. Well, we've kind of moved away from the Global Solution Frameworks, but I think they're, you know, if they're still useful for you, I think you can still use those.
So
Oh,
for the folks who haven't said anything, I know you guys have ideas. We want to hear them because you're here. You're not just here to learn, but I think this is a great community, this group of people, everybody wants to be helpful. I'm going to give you guys a few things that I've used in my time as a platform owner. I'm just going to walk you through some of the steps and see if any of that resonates with you and it drives a little further conversation. So when I'm trying to set a vision for what I'm doing, I have some very basic steps, and I kind of have a basic framework, and then I fill it in as needed. First thing I do, same as what Jerry and David said, was understanding strategic goals and defining my success metrics. Without those KPIs, I don't know what I've done, if it's made a difference, if it's made things better, if I'm reaching a goal of some sort. Next, I'm going to identify those core stakeholders and then figure out what their needs are. So yes, this is a business need, but how do I translate that into my users? Because without my stakeholders getting buy-in, it's really not going to go anywhere. So creating a user-centric vision is really one of those critical pieces that I think about. I then define my platform scope. So is it going to be a phased implementation of whatever it is I'm trying to do? Is it a specific application I'm looking at? How does that application interact with those dependencies with other parts of the platform? Then I focus on that automation and efficiency that we talked about, because that's really critical. There's no point in doing things if it makes it harder for everyone. Then I make sure that I cover whether or not it's like I emphasize integrations and scalability. So if the current data set maybe is an Excel spreadsheet, I need to find an automated way. So how did that data get in the Excel spreadsheet? Because it's not going to be scalable if I always have to have everything in this Excel spreadsheet. There has to be a data source for that. So we're going to cover that more next week as well. Then I make sure that I have governance in place and security so that I can ensure I'm being compliant, especially when we're in places where it's a need to know. Yes, if you gave everyone access to everything in ServiceNow, it'd be easy for everybody, but not really meeting our security and compliance goals for segregating data between groups. And then building a strong support and maintenance plan. So having that team to help me ensure that the platform health stays up to date, it's being maintained, you're doing testing in between releases. I always make sure I do everything in I would say I try to be agile, but sometimes things, as you know, have to be waterfall. So do a hybrid approach. And then making sure I have a good OCM plan in place. Anything I do in the platform has to have some good OCM behind it. Wagile. I like that, Rita, Wagile.
And then when I was in
it works. And then
It
when we
does.
look at after you're done, let's say doing whatever this activity is, I always want to put in some kind of post-implementation measurements. What happened when I was done? Did it work? Did it have the desired effect? Did it make it worse? And then build in some sort of continuous improvement plan. I typically document an actual vision statement based on what my findings are of what I want to communicate out to everybody. So I'd love to hear what everybody else does. If that resonated with any of you who've done those things, I'd love to hear about it.
Okay, Casey's using the Gen AI to create a visual cartoon character of Agile One for Waterfall. I would love to see that, Casey. I think you need to share a link to that in the chat. Elizabeth, you were off mute. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, sometimes what I have to consider, a lot of what we do is very process oriented and they want to start something. And I have to ask the questions, well, how do we stop this?
Yeah.
Or do we need to stop this? Or who needs to stop it? And start asking all the who, what, where, when, whys on the process. Because usually they're just thinking about the beginning and not the middle and the end.
Mhm. I think that's kind of, I don't know about other countries, but in America, we're just so goal oriented. It's like, oh, you know, we want this, and we don't think about how we're going to get there. Jerry, did you want to chime in something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I've had, many kind of stakeholders would be coming to me and also our product team to say, we really want this capability, or we want this form to be developed, but really without them understanding around the bigger picture, because anyone can think about their own process, but again, it's understanding, right, what the dependencies that's going to have an impact. And if you're going to be designing a process, is that just for your own purpose or for your own department's purpose, without actually understanding, okay, is there a bigger picture here? Because obviously what we don't want is start to develop in something that you're going to have to go back and rework, because once let's say once you've made that live in production, it could work for one set of customers, but then another set of customers would be like, well, what's this process? It doesn't work with ours. So we just really need to kind of take a step back and then really understand, okay, so requirements come in to do the X, Y, and Z. Okay, let me take a step out. Is this going to have an impact on any other areas of the business? So that's kind of my own experience of where I've, you had to say no. And that's what we need to do, is to say no more. But it's not saying no, we're not going to do this, but say no to have a conversation about, okay, let's understand the overall process and how that's going to have an impact, and also what the benefits are and what those outcomes are going to be delivered as part of that.
And Casey, our self-owned introvert, wants to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Jerry. And like one thing we had done pretty early on, because I think a lot of the experience comes from walk-ups or emails or pings saying, hey, I want a thing, is we made an order guide for ServiceNow enhancements and forced everybody through that. And we kept the form pretty lean. We didn't want to make people fill out a bunch of paperwork. But that would hit a review phase where either myself or another product owner, an expert, like would actually have a consult call, like a 15-20 minute call, just asking, like, what are you trying to do with this, and understand it more. And we wouldn't move it out of that phase until we had enough information. So we wouldn't get stories created or anything until we really understood what was going on. But we didn't want too much like bureaucracy getting in the way of actually getting things done. If we had too many layers of approval and too many documentation elements, like you'll never make positive change fast enough in an organization. So we try to be efficient. We set our own SLAs to try to get back to them within a day or two and things like that. But that helped us keep things flowing, kind of like with ITSM, like help desks want people to go through the portal. They want to groom the information. We wanted to mimic some of that behavior.
Robert, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, so I've had good luck doing exactly that with the demand module. There's the demand and ideation modules within the SPM. Although demand, I think, is available outside of SPM. But you can bring it in, review it, decide whether you want to do it. You put your governance on the demand, and then you categorize it as an epic or a story and fire it off toward development.
Yeah, that's a great option if you have licensing for that.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, and Ben chimed in. Demand manager, great funnel. Yeah, operational demands.
yeah. That whole process is already from demand to the agile module to track your development is all pre-built. It's all there.
Yep.
And now demand is overblown, right? I mean, it's all sorts of, it's designed for a big company with ratings, and you have to just kind of turn off all of that stuff if you're going to use it for a small utilization, like just ServiceNow.
And Daniel, you wanted to chime in too?
Yeah, I mean, we are also using demand quite heavily for our ITSM mostly, but I just wanted to share, a funny story with you guys. So basically, I think our company is with ServiceNow since like, I don't know, 2011 or something. And I think we didn't have a vision ever, especially when the ServiceNow in the beginnings was more like, here's the platform, guys, and you build whatever you need, right? There's ITSM, and there was not so much of the modules existing at that time. So we basically like over customized the whole thing. You cannot imagine, and it was like what the business needs or what our customers needs, we are going to deliver, right? And there was not control over it. Now we are in a situation where we are trying to change that. We are trying to go back to out of the box to use all the new features that ServiceNow offers, etc. And we are actually trying to sell a new vision to our, divisions and business and basically our customers, and kind of change their perception of how we should build the new out of the box platform, possibly carry, most of the processes that were built and kind of, rework this whole thing. So I don't have the answer for the vision at this point because I'm anyway in this role for like 2 weeks, so quite new. But yeah, that's what we are going through now.
I'm glad you're here, and hopefully some of the information we have here will be helpful to you. Dylan, what did you want to come in with?
Yeah, Daniel's point really struck home with me that I'm essentially the sole ServiceNow admin at our company, like the only person who works on it full time. And our initial leadership started with that idea of don't customize, and our company's been growing really rapidly. We're getting into a lot of new people asking immediately for customization, and it's been a challenge on my perspective to try to say no correctly to people and get that information. So not too much to add on how to do it correctly, but I think this has been really good food for thought on how that can help with it.
Yeah, and it's really hard to change the culture once you start going down that path too.
Yeah.
Jerry, go
I
ahead.
mean, it's a good point that you mentioned. I think I was very much of, trying to keep things that are out of the box. And I think it's a case of trying to sell it back to the organization to say, well, if we are going to customize, then we're going to create more technical debt. Upgrade time will be impacted because we're going to have to do more testing, and your stakeholders are going to be involved in more testing. So, you have to weigh up the costs, really, weigh up the cost and the time. And again, if you're going to do more customizations, then we need more resources to be able to support it going forward. Because I can tell you now, in my experience, do any customizations and you do upgrades, things will break. Things will absolutely break. So it's what's the appetite for the business as in terms of a risk perspective. If they can accept that, then they need to help and invest in the teams and resources to be able to support that going forward. But absolutely agree with the point made around maintain it out of the box. It's just more simple maintenance, and it's just more ease of use when you're doing upgrades.
100%. And Philippe.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Once again, I'm here. Yesterday, we got a conversation about Ask the Experts, and I didn't bring this because it was not part of our, chapter related to Now Create. But recently, I'm helping a partner, right? And they are with some customers, and some of the customers related to the vision, they are telling me what we are hiring. We are hiring professional services or managed services. And this goes related to this point of view that we are talking about out of the box, customizations, all that stuff. And I told them, right, if you're asking me professional services is people will trade, people will train, people that it's professional, they know how the platform works and they will do whatever your needs are. If you need managed services, is something that comes up, something that you have already done, and you are bringing me that to fix it for you. maybe that would be a configuration, maybe that would be a customization, but at some point, that managed services will cost you more than even working on a professional services. Why? Because you have already done, and this is something I don't know, but I want to expose this. I have seen a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. And yesterday we were discussing this with Brita. And a true fact is people is not making research before doing implementations. As platform owners, we sustain and we shall communicate people, or we shall invite people on educating them to, let's join together, let's watch the documentation, let's read it out loudly before we begin, the workshops or everything, or just to stay at the point of knowing the state of art of what we are going to do. But some people, they jump and they are, I want this green, I want this purple, I want this with squares, I want this with circles. All right, did you know that? No, I didn't know, but I want it. Well, at some point, this clause, just to be concise, once we were discussing the professional and the managed services, I was telling them, managed services will take longer, will cost more, and we will have to invest time and research on your platform because you don't even know but it's there, right? And professional services is something that we can qualify, and basically listening to you, listening to your ideas, what we have already seen so far, demands, ideas, and placing that as a release process to make it being included on an epic story or being on the uses cases is basically practical adoption. And some people, they don't do that since the beginning. Yesterday, we were discussing about using Now Create. And well, I know that Brita has this as a last point, but if we use documentation and we use this process as made a part to create the story or create the state of art, what we want to do, everything gets sustainable because you have the pipeline baseline action to know what's coming up and what's going to be done. So those are typical things that happens, and most likely it happens because we have rush where people is really in that matter of we need to see that right now ASAP, and things to be on the good manner takes time. So those are matters that we always will be on limits. We will have boundaries on how to
Yep.
go through, or where to go through, or where to navigate with everybody on the companies, or even a customer.
And Tenny, you wanted to make a comment?
Oh yeah, I want to make a comment. So I I usually think customization is it's really bad. We shouldn't do it. But over time, I realized that there are some situations whereby customization is required based on the critical business need, and it's really all about how do we really want to customize this. I know ServiceNow have the business smart customization to see, okay, we have to do this. Are we following best practice? Are we documenting this as much as possible? Are we doing adequate knowledge transfer? Do you have a customization register? When you have things like that, even if when you have to customize, you are doing it in the best way possible. You have processes in place. And if you want to do upgrade, all you need to do is just go check your documentation, check everything that was done, review the upgrade log and all of that. It just makes things much more easier. But there are times that we really can avoid customization 100% based on the business need. Because if the organization pay for ServiceNow and they can use it to do their critical business, it's not even serving the purpose. But sometimes if it can be avoided, that should be the last option. And if it needs to be done, how best should you do it? I think that's one thing that's also very important. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, and there's a couple other people chiming in on this. And I also did a webinar with Chuck Tomasi a while back on this. And to your point, and I just dropped that in the chat, customization is sometimes necessary, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's how you have the technical governance around it and your ability to support it when upgrades come around. That's really key. And Daniel, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, so upgrade is one thing, right? That's definitely problematic when you over customize. But what we figured out after several, and as I said, right, we are in this ServiceNow platform like since, I don't know, 2000, like very, very early stages, right? And what we figured out is that now we cannot use any of the new ServiceNow modules, right? We cannot connect them together, right? We have completely different CMDB because when we were starting, the CMDB was still a new, fresh thing. So we had to create a lot of custom tables that basically now are available by ServiceNow, you know, out of the box, right? But we have them customized. And what we figured out that we cannot now connect to all the new modules, new applications that are part of our license. We would love to use them, but we have troubles to just, you know, activate them and connect them to CMDB and, you know, some other tools, incident management, etc. So that is the pain for us specifically, and not just the upgrades.
Yeah. That is a challenge for our legacy customers because I mean, you weren't wrong necessarily to create those tables because we didn't have that functionality, but now you have that challenge of bringing it back.
So one of the things I've recommended to my legacy customers, so prior, for anybody who doesn't know me, I used to be a consultant for a dozen years or so on the ServiceNow platform. So round about 2 or 3 years ago, we started seeing issues where the new applications came out and people were doing exactly what Daniel said. They couldn't use them because they had all these system configurations and customizations that were preventing them from working properly. So one of the things that we used to do, we would do health checks, which we can do with Impact, etc. We would take that customer's instance. We would essentially do an entire project around determining what the actual current need was. Yes, we know what the need was previously. And we would end up building them a new instance that met their requirements, minus all the customizations. Yes, it was time consuming. They could continue to use their old instance while the new instance was being spun up. We could do all of the testing. But in that new instance, we had customers set up governance around any new asks on that new platform. So essentially, there would be a team of people who would make the decision, oh, I want this cool customization. Okay, that's great, but let's determine why. Let's see if there's a fit with existing functionality. Maybe you need to change your process, not change how the tool works. You can get the same outcome. That's just one of those things for you to think about. If you've got an instance that you're really struggling on being able to use the new functionality, one of those things to consider is maybe it's time to get a new one. Maybe it's time to figure out, do we want to stop dealing with all the technical debt and the problems that are being created with the new configurations and go with a new instance? Just something to think about.
Well,
people
because
who can help with that.
yeah, I've had, you know, customers go back and try to fix things, and, you know, like particularly, you know, if you're a legacy customer, it is so hard to go back and find everything that ever happened, and get it. You're going to take way more time trying to do that. And I see Ben has posted in here a link to a ServiceNow story where Shell actually replaced ServiceNow with ServiceNow, which is exactly what Yvette's talking about. You know, and that just makes a lot of sense. And then, you know, Casey makes a good point too here in the chat that a lot of times people just don't know enough about their applications or what they're licensed for, and they go off and build things. Or, you know, developers, they love our platform and they like to build, so sometimes they just want to go build it because it's a challenge, but that's not always obviously a good reason to do it. So that gets back to that conversation we had a little earlier about demand and governance. So any other comments here? We've kind of gone through a range of things. I can kind of go through some more of the steps and some of the tools that we've collected here. And like I said, if you have any other tools that you want to add to this list, we'll add them links. And, you know, I'm going to try to create like a useful workbook for y'all with these resources. Yes, absolutely, Thomas. The slides will be in the platform owners resource area under the connect section on the community. So the recording and the slides will be available there. One of the other things that you can use when you're just getting started with a product is the welcome guides. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but that's a piece of content that should exist on every product hub on the community, and it basically gives you an orientation to that product, you know, how to do training, what are some business outcomes you might be looking for, some a little bit on sequencing maybe, or thoughts of what you're going to connect it to, training that you're going to need to support that application. So the welcome guides are really good starting point resources. If you've never used those, there's an example here in the deck that we'll send out. Of course, it's Yvette's because we know hers are amazing. And that brings us to the next topic, which I think might generate some conversation, is sequencing. I used to get this question all the time when I was leading projects, you know, what sequence way do you do these things? People are worried about doing things in the wrong order. So we've provided a few resources here. The first two are sequencing documents that are on the community, and then the other one is a link to a sample of one on Now Create. So those also exist for all the products out there. But interested to hear what folks, what challenges or tips you have around sequencing your implementations. Yes, you're right, Casey. There's pretty much one for everyone, and it goes through like a crawl, walk, run, fly state. How many of you all were aware of those? If anybody wants to put up their hand, and did you know that we had those available? Okay, Ben knew about it. Anybody else? Okay, David's asking what counts as customization. You know, so that is always the $10,000 question, right? That link that I posted in the chat a little earlier for I think I still have it in my paste buffer, so I'll just paste it here again. This is a webinar that I did with Chuck Tomasi a little over a year ago, where we broke it down around this topic. And, you know, in the past, we used to get into, well, if you modify a business rule, it's customization, but if you add a field, it's configuration, you know, and we try to go through all of this. And basically what we broke it down to is it's impossible to really make a definition, because everybody's definition is going to be a little bit different. So what you have to know is, what do you want to own in the platform and manage? And do you have a way to manage that? Because to your points earlier, it's going to affect your ability to do upgrades or implement new products coming in. And yes, we do need to have a rap battle. I think Chuck would probably win that. But anybody else's thoughts on customization versus configuration? Because I'm sure there's some thoughts out there, because it is generally a very hot topic. Or maybe everybody just went off and started watching the video. I don't know. But I really think if you try to define it, it's going to take you into a rabbit hole. And Philippe, you wanted to make a comment on that?
One of the things that I always tell everybody is stay out of the unknown zone. And the unknown zone is called configuration versus customization. If you don't have the documentation, don't do that, because you already know, and I do believe most of us, we already know what happens. And it's basically what comes out. Basically, the sequence that I have seen for many years, not only as a trainer, but once people comes out, or people, it's not only joining, because people get the training to get involved and learn the best practices, but as well, some people brings questions, and people is, can we do this? And I was, well, this is parking lot off topic, I'll let you know later. But even what we try to do is, we are not trying to always tell the people, don't do that, because you never know. The negative or the prerogative action is what people loves. You tell somebody, don't smoke, don't drink, and they do it. So I never tell the people, don't do it. What I tell the people is, did you already make a proper research of what you're trying to do? Did you already check alternatives? Remember, no code, pro code, low code. Did you already identify scenarios where somebody has been involved? Did you already check ServiceNow community? And people is, no, that's why I'm bringing you the question. And I was right. Now I'm giving you an answer. If you analyze the situation, you will find answers, but don't bring a question without, making any research, or without analyzing the risk. And here's something that sometimes people throughout the vision is not really going into the specific points of risk management. I know that some people is related to what we already talked about, compliance and GRC. Some others we are not. But for some reason, checking inside your company what the risk of making something brings up to, it's a really good way to identify if you can do it or not. And well, it's basically some people they make the offer and they start doing it. Some people is like, there's a bunch of actions there. There's a bunch of team effort. So no, we prefer your answer. And
I think giving people the risk and the cost associated, like you're saying, is a really good way to say no without saying no.
yep, yep.
Uh,
Basically, Brita, the best way it's telling people, check it out. Go on, check it, make the validation, and you will see what will be the results before doing it. Because the main point, and I think the main point of being a platform owner is that we can educate people, or we can suggest people not acting like we do, but telling the people why things should work on the best practice or the best mode as an area. So we are, creating the baseline actions for this platform or the ecosystem itself.
and Daniel, you wanted to chime in on this with a legacy system. I'm sure you have something to say on this.
Yeah, well, I would just say customizations are not necessarily bad, right? Or configurations, whatever. But I think what is important, what will be important for us would be to not cut ties with the ServiceNow as a product, right? Because you can actually build with the ServiceNow whatever you want, right? You can build something which is totally unique. But if you basically cut the ties with the out-of-the-box data model that each of the applications or modules offers, then you are long-term in trouble, and you need to think about long. Okay, I think I got muted. Not sure.
Sorry, Daniel, I was trying to put your hand down and I accidentally muted you. I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries. So I was basically saying that do not cut ties with the ServiceNow data model, because what you want to do is to think long-term, and long-term you are adding more and more modules into your ServiceNow platform, right? Because ServiceNow is a great tool, and you start small with one thing, but eventually you end up having like so many things from ServiceNow. But if you cut ties in the beginning and you're not thinking long term about, will I be able to use this module, for example, if I use, I don't know, release management, will I be able to connect it with demand management, etc. Right? If you're not thinking this way, then you will end up in trouble after a few years. But if you build customizations, let's say, next to the out-of-the-box data model, not on top of it, right? Then you should be fine.
And Temi makes a good point that, your architects and your developers and everybody else play a role in this, because it's a team effort. And, as Yvette says, it's about that platform governance. Ramiro, please speak up.
Sorry, it was a mistake.
Oh, okay. Jerry, you have the floor.
Thanks, Britta. Just wanted to ask the group actually if there's anyone had any experience where, where let me try to phrase the question where, as a platform owner, you've got a set budget to invest in ServiceNow, whereas let's say there is a module capability that you want to kind of, let's say, implement, but obviously you by buying that you only are implementing, let's say, 10% of it. What's people's thoughts around where, give an example, let's say legal wants a case management system, but we can't, let's say, buy or purchase a legal case management capability, but we want to be able to then customize and create, using something like App Engine Studio or extending a table to create a solution like that.
That's a great question. Anybody want to chime in on this one? Anybody been through this experience or also having this challenge? It's okay.
Maybe,
David,
maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So we're actually going through something that's along the same lines, but from a different perspective at the moment, because we as an organization have had quite a lot of financial difficulties over the last couple of years, and we're looking to, well, the company is looking to just save costs in as many different places as possible. Now, ServiceNow is obviously quite an expensive tool, and if we're just going to use it for the basics of IT service management, we might as well just go with something that's a really cheap product just off the shelf, rather than ServiceNow and all its weird and wonderful possibilities. So what I'm trying to do is kind of the not the opposite to what we're talking about, but I am trying to drive as much use out of it as possible, which is involving trying to onboard teams that are not really traditionally ServiceNow users, not for the modules that we've purchased anyway. So a good example of this is our procurement team. So within our CSM license, we have a procurement module. It's not the full-blown ServiceNow procurement module, which we're in reality we're never going to be able to afford, but it gives us enough that we should be able to run quite a bit of our procurement function using it. And it will, with our integration hub that we've recently just purchased, we should be able to connect out to Workday and automate the like the payment of our invoices and things like that. So we should be able to build something that does the end-to-end procurement process with what we've already got. So what we're actually trying to do is to expand the use of it by being a bit creative in order to build more of a business demand for ServiceNow, to make it more of to make it stick more within the organization, so that when it comes to our next renewal, we're not going to have as much difficulty in doing it. So we've got the challenge of trying to drive as much value out of it as possible, but then we have to try and make sure that we keep as little customization as possible within that. So it's quite a difficult challenge, and we're gonna have to rely on a partner, I think, to try and give us the advice where we try and keep things as out of the box as possible, but also are able to spread the use of ServiceNow to other teams. So it's not exactly the thing that you asked, Jerry, but it kind of leans into it. So yeah, it's a bit of a difficult
Yeah.
task at the
No,
moment.
I was going to say, David, no, thank you for answering that question, because it's very similar to what, we're doing, where I'm working now, is how can we maximize the use of ServiceNow? Because like I said, the business and the organization maybe don't know ServiceNow that well, and again, it's very much of their understanding it's an IT service management tool. But again, it's obviously as our position as platform or product owner is to go out to the business and really kind of sell that and say, look, it's not just an IT service management tool. Again, it's something that can be used across the organization. I mean, we're currently using it across HR, finance, legal. We've got some other professional services areas that we're utilizing it. So, people are seeing the value. It's just a case of, well, there are, again, there are different modules out there that could be used, but again, might not be utilized as well as something that could be just, let's just develop something and show the value. And maybe then later, once we've shown that value, is okay, here's what more, within the ecosystem in ServiceNow, this is what more you could do, that you could start to leverage some of that capabilities that are out of the box more. And that's where I would say is if you could show someone or a department, say there's a value, and you can demo that and show them, right, this is what you can do. Maybe then that will give people more of the inspiration of, right, we can do more. We can do more with a tool like ServiceNow.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I also like the comment that Mark put into the chat here, because I think a lot of companies don't realize where they're spending their IT money all the time. And he makes the good point of, doing these asset inventories and audits in SAM and HAM. You can find, efficiencies there and save some money. I don't know, Yvette, did you pay him to put that in there? But
I
it makes it,
didn't, but I was thinking about it because it's true. I have a lot of people who use the SAM and HAM applications to fund other parts of the platform. Once they've reduced their spend on unnecessary software purchases, they can turn around and take that money because it's already in the IT budget and put it toward another, say, application like SecOps inside of ServiceNow, since that to me is, or APM, something that would be beneficial and leverages the data that you already have on the platform. It's just a matter of finding that first part of the platform that's an addition with known returns on investment. And SAM and HAM do have known returns on investment. So if you're managing your assets in spreadsheets, you're definitely going to save money once you put them in service. Now you're going to uncover shadow IT, you're going to uncover unnecessary spend, be able to redeploy licenses and redeploy physical assets, or have better control over your virtualized environments, which in turn control cost. All of that effort and money, which comes with a significant amount of automation, can then be turned around and spent on another part of the platform that you really did want, but you have to get the money from somewhere.
Mhm. Yeah, and Casey's leaning in on that too, with, you know, where you can really show that ROI with SAM, obviously, which is awesome.
And building that in also increases trust in ServiceNow. So if people are seeing it just as an ITSM tool, and why are we spending this much on an ITSM, if all of a sudden you show, I was at an organization that we didn't have ServiceNow. I was trying to prove it out, and I ended up finding $750,000 worth of unused software through software and hardware audits, so that we could buy ServiceNow. So it's very easy to do so. It does take effort and the right people to really churn through SAM and HAM and find those inefficiencies.
You're one of our best heroes out there. That was awesome. Dominique has a question on how SAM and HAM relate to ITSM CMDB, and is anyone using SAM HAM for onboarding processes with identity access management? Yvette, do you have anything else you can expand on that, maybe?
I do. I could talk about this all day, but we only have 4 minutes.
I know.
So yes, there are a lot of customers who, so when we're talking about SAM and HAM being related to ITSM, it's a lot of interconnection between SAM and HAM because ITSM's connecting with the CIs. But in order to understand the spend, we tie those together. So you have the asset tied to the CI, all the financials sit on the asset side, so I can get a total cost of ownership for a variety of assets, whether it's my end user compute devices, but I can tie, if I've got rate cards tied to my support tickets, I can see what the cost is to repair devices. The CMDB, of course, is directly related to assets in the fact that some assets are connected to CIs. That's a thing. I have other sessions. Come to my open office hours the last Wednesday of the month. We could talk about asset all day. We have SAM the third Tuesday of every month where we do the same. But talking about that and onboarding processes, we integrate directly with the onboarding process. We have some interconnectivity with HRSD or with just your processes for HR by themselves. We can build automation into a new hire request or an offboarding request and retrieving those assets back. So we have a lot of things that we can do to automate that, which makes it easier on the support team, easier on the ITAM team, and a better understanding and reflection of what the business is doing to save money overall.
And Sarah also points out, you know, coming from our SecOps team, that there's also savings in that area as well with the HAM and SAM integrations. I am so sorry that we are coming up on the end of the hour here, because this has been an amazing discussion. I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as I have, and I think there's been a lot of fantastic information shared here. We didn't get all the way through our deck, which is great, because I'd rather have you all talking than me. But what the other things that we had planned to talk about were some of the tools, other tools for setting up for requirements gathering. And I think what we'll do next month is we'll just pick up on this slide and continue with the conversation if everybody is okay with that. If anybody is opposed, please drop something in the chat, but we can pick up with this conversation where we left off. And also, I just wanted to mention that I do have some Ask the Expert series coming up. Next week, we'll be talking about accessibility features in the platform. And these you can all find, I post these all on my LinkedIn profile. And we'll also be talking about imposter syndrome on March 4th. It's not just for women. We have ATF new features in Yokohama coming up, and reporting basics, and ITOM, getting started with ITOM. And then we have a couple around upgrades. So there's a lot of good Ask the Experts also coming up. And I'll post that schedule on my LinkedIn as well. But I do want to be respectful of everybody's time and end on time here. So thanks everybody for coming and all the great input. Yvette didn't have to call out on anybody because she was threatening before the meeting. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks,
you.
Britta.
Have a good one,
Thanks a
everybody.
lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.